Why was a 15-year-old girl being sent into combat alongside Navy SEALs? That's what they all thought when they first saw her. That's what the whispers were about in the briefing room. 15. A child, a liability, but they had it wrong. Dead wrong. And by the time they realized their mistake, 12 terrorists would be dead, 7 operators would be alive, and the legend of the Christmas ghost would be born. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. To understand how Kira Blackwood ended up on that frozen Afghan mountain with a rifle in her hands and the weight of 7 lives pressing down on her trigger finger, you have to go back. Back to North Carolina. Back to the rifle range where winter sun filtered through pine trees and the air smelled of gun oil and possibility. Back to the man who made her into a weapon. December 21st, 2004, Fort Bragg. The steel target rang out across the empty facility, 800 meters downrange. The sound echoed through the pines like a church bell, high right, 2 inches. Colonel Wade Brennan's voice carried no judgment, just fact. He stood behind her, hands clasped, watching through binoculars. 68 years old with retirement gray hair cut military short, eyes that had seen Grenada, Desert Storm, eyes that were dying. Kira made the adjustment, breathed, fired again. Center mass, perfect. Better, Brennan said, but you're thinking too much. She sat up from her prone position, brushing pine needles from her jacket. 25 years old, Lance Corporal, United States Marine Corps, top graduate from Scout Sniper School. Hair pulled back in a regulation bun. A face that still drew questions from men who thought war belonged to them alone. I'm not hesitating, Colonel. I'm calculating. Calculation is for before the shot. During the shot, you trust. Brennan walked to the shooting mat, moved with the careful steps of a man whose body was betraying him. Gulf War syndrome, the doctors called it. Poison from burning oil fields in Kuwait. Cancer eating him from the inside. 3 months left, maybe 4. He knelt beside her, slower than he used to. Each movement deliberate, careful, the way you handle glass you know is about to break. Your deployment orders came through. Kira felt her stomach tighten. The kind of tightness that comes when you know your life is about to change and there's nothing you can do to stop it. When? Christmas Eve, Afghanistan, Hindu Kush Mountains. He pulled something from his pocket, a small object, an old hand mirror. The glass scratched and clouded with age. The frame bent at one corner like it had survived something violent. He positioned it at an angle, catching the late afternoon sun. A flash of reflected light appeared 50 feet to their left. Scope glint, every sniper's biggest vulnerability. The enemy sees that reflection, they know where you are. He adjusted the mirror again, changing the angle. But what if you control what they see? What if you show them a reflection that isn't you? Understanding dawned in her eyes, a decoy. Deception saves lives, Kira. A sniper isn't just a shooter. A sniper is a problem solver. When conventional tactics fail, you improvise. He handed her the mirror. The metal was warm from his pocket. She could see an engraving on the back. Words worn almost smooth by decades of handling. Blackwood legacy. Make every shot count. This was your father's, she whispered. Before it was his, it was mine. Before it was mine, it was a piece of junk I found in a Cuban barracks in '83. I gave it to Marcus in '93. He carried it in Mogadishu. Brennan's voice remained steady, but something flickered in his eyes. Old grief. Old guilt that never quite heals. Now it's yours. Keep it close. It might save your life when everything else fails. Kira turned the mirror over in her hands. Her father had held this, had used this, had died with this in his pocket. The weight of it felt like more than metal and glass. It felt like legacy, like responsibility, like all the men who'd carried it before her were watching to see what she'd do with it. Colonel, why Afghanistan? Why now? Brennan stood, looked out across the range toward the tree line. The sun was getting lower, shadows stretching long and thin across the frost-covered grass. Because I made your father a promise, and because you're ready for this mission. What promise? That if something happened to him, I'd train you right, make you better than he was, give you the skills to save lives the way he did. He turned back to her, met her eyes, held them. Marcus saved 11 Rangers in Mogadishu, died on a rooftop on Christmas Eve, holding position so they could extract. You know the story. I know. What you don't know is that mission was supposed to be routine. Intel said light resistance. It was an ambush, just like half the missions we walk into. Bad intelligence. Good soldiers paying the price. His jaw tightened. You could see the anger there. The kind that's been burning for 11 years and still hasn't gone out. Your father could have pulled back, could have saved himself. He chose to stay, chose to keep shooting until every ranger was safe. The weight of legacy settled on Kira's shoulders. Heavy, inescapable, the kind of weight that either breaks you or turns you into something stronger than you thought you could be. The mission in Afghanistan, Brennan continued. It's a hostage extraction. SEAL Team 7, high risk, terrible weather, mountain terrain. Intel says 15 to 20 hostiles, but Intel is always wrong. He met her eyes again. I recommended you specifically for this operation, called in every favor I had left. You did what? The team commander is Ryan Garrett. He owes me his life from Mogadishu. He'll give you a chance, one chance. Brennan placed a hand on her shoulder, the grip firm despite the cancer eating through him. They'll doubt you because you're 25 and female. They'll mock you. They'll question whether you belong, prove them wrong quietly. Let your shooting do the talking. Kira felt anger and pride mixing in her chest. Two emotions that don't always work well together but somehow, in that moment, made perfect sense. Colonel, you're dying. You should be resting, not pulling strings for what? For my best student, for Marcus Blackwood's daughter. His grip tightened. Kira, I'm dying. That's not changing. What I can change is making sure my last contribution to the Corps matters. You matter. This mission matters. Men like Ryan Garrett need to see that the future of Marine snipers isn't about gender. It's about skill, heart, commitment. The sun touched the horizon. Orange light filtered through the pines, making everything look like it was on fire, like the world was ending or beginning, depending on how you looked at it. What if I fail? The question came out smaller than she intended, more vulnerable, the kind of question that shows you're still human underneath all the training and toughness. Then you fail, but you won't. I trained you too well for that. He released her shoulder. Your father died so others could live. That's the code. The only code that matters. You understand it in your bones because you're his daughter. Now go prove it to the world. That night, Kira packed her gear in her barracks room. The M4A3 rifle disassembled and cleaned. Scope zeroed and protected. Father's mirror wrapped in cloth and secured in her chest pocket, close to her heart where she could feel it pressing against her ribs with every breath. On the wall above her bunk, a photograph. Marcus Blackwood in dress blues, strong jaw, steady eyes. The kind of man who became a Marine because anything less wouldn't fit. He'd been 32 in that photo. 7 years older than she was now. 7 years before Mogadishu took him. She touched the frame. I'll make you proud, Dad, I promise. Her phone buzzed, text message from Colonel Brennan. Remember, fear means you're human. Courage means you act anyway. See you when you get back. She typed a response. Semper Fi, Colonel, thank you for everything. The reply came instantly. The thank you goes both ways. You're the best thing I ever built. Now go show them what Marcus Blackwood's daughter can do. Kira lay in her bunk that night, staring at the ceiling, thinking about her father on a Mogadishu rooftop, thinking about Brennan dying of poison he'd breathed in a decade ago, thinking about SEAL Team 7 pinned down in mountains she'd never seen, thinking about the weight of expectations and the burden of legacy and whether she was strong enough to carry both. Sleep didn't come easy. It never does before deployment. But when it finally came, she dreamed of snow and mountains and a shot that mattered more than any shot she'd ever taken. She just didn't know it yet. December 23, 2004, Bagram Airfield, Afghanistan. The C-17 touched down in darkness. Kira stepped onto the tarmac and the cold hit her like a physical force. Not the dry cold of North Carolina. This was different. Wet. Cutting. The kind of cold that found every gap in your clothing and reminded you that nature doesn't care about your training or your confidence or your father's legacy. A Humvee waited on the tarmac, engine running, exhaust rising in white clouds against the black sky. A Marine corporal stood beside it, looking bored despite the hour. Lance Corporal Blackwood. That's me. He looked her up and down, not with hostility, just curiosity, like he was trying to figure out what she was doing here. What someone who looked like her was doing stepping off a transport in the middle of the night in a war zone. I'm supposed to take you to the SEAL compound. They're expecting you. The drive took 20 minutes, through checkpoints, past rows of tents and temporary buildings, past helicopters lined up like sleeping birds. The base was a small city, temporary but functional, the kind of place that springs up when war decides to stay a while. The SEAL compound was separate from the main base, more isolated, higher security. The corporal stopped at the gate, showed his ID, waited while guards checked underneath the vehicle with mirrors. Finally, they waved him through. "Good luck," he said as Kira climbed out. "You're gonna need it." She didn't ask what he meant. She already knew. The briefing room was full when she walked in. 7 men, all SEALs, all staring at her with expressions that ranged from confusion to amusement to outright disbelief. She recognized the look, had seen it before. The look that said, "What is this?" The look that said, "This has to be a mistake." At the head of the table stood Commander Ryan Garrett, 42 years old, silver at his temples, face weathered by 2 decades of operations, eyes that had seen things most people only see in nightmares. He looked at Kira for a long moment, then looked at the file in his hands, then back at her. "Lance Corporal Blackwood." "Sir." "You're our sniper." "Yes, sir." Someone snorted. She didn't turn to see who, didn't react, just stood there at attention, waiting. Brennan's words echoing in her head, "Let your shooting do the talking." Garrett studied her, weighing something, making a decision. Finally, he gestured to an empty chair. "Sit down, let's talk about the mission." She sat. The room felt too warm after the cold outside. Or maybe it was just the weight of all those eyes on her. All those doubts pressing down like a physical thing. Garrett pulled up a map on the projector. Satellite imagery, mountains, valleys, a compound marked in red. "Intel says we have 3 American contractors being held here. Engineers working on a pipeline project, taken 6 days ago. Taliban wants a prisoner exchange. We're not negotiating." He clicked to the next slide. Thermal imaging, heat signatures, buildings, guards. Best estimate 15 to 20 hostiles, possibly more. Terrain is brutal, weather is worse. Storm rolling in on Christmas Eve. That's our window. One of the SEALs spoke up. Hispanic, built like a tank. Name tape said Rodriguez. "Commander, with respect, why are we bringing a Lance Corporal on a SEAL operation? We have our own snipers." Garrett's jaw tightened. "Because Colonel Wade Brennan called in a favor. Because Lance Corporal Blackwood is the top graduate from Scout Sniper School this year. Because she's qualified." Rodriguez wasn't backing down. "She's also 25, sir." The room went quiet. That kind of quiet where everyone's thinking the same thing, but only one person is brave enough or stupid enough to say it out loud. Kira spoke before Garrett could. "My age is 25. My kill count is 0. My qualification scores are the highest in my class. My father was Marcus Blackwood, Mogadishu 93. He saved 11 Rangers before he died. I'm here to do the same job he did, save lives. If you have a problem with that, take it up with Colonel Brennan. If he was here, he'd tell you the same thing I'm telling you now. I'm qualified, I'm ready, and I'm not leaving. The silence stretched. Rodriguez stared at her. Then slowly something changed in his eyes. Not acceptance. Not yet, but maybe a grudging respect for someone who'd stand their ground. Garrett cleared his throat. As I was saying, 3 hostages, 20 hostiles, bad terrain, worse weather. We insert at 0200 on Christmas Eve. The storm gives us cover, but it also complicates extraction. We need to be fast, clean, professional. He clicked to another slide, topographic map. Elevation lines clustered tight, steep terrain. Blackwood, this is your position. Northern Ridge, 1,200 meters from the compound. You'll have overwatch on the entire operation. Primary objective is target identification and elimination. Secondary objective is compound security. Tertiary objective is extraction support. She studied the map, calculated angles, wind factors, temperature drop at altitude. What's the temperature forecast? -8°C, wind chill closer to -30, wind 20 miles per hour, gusting to 30. She nodded, difficult but manageable. Another SEAL spoke, younger, maybe 30, name tape, said Chen, and if you miss, if you can't make the shot, then you'll know it immediately because I'll tell you, and you'll adjust your approach accordingly. Chen smiled, not friendly, not yet, but interested, fair enough. Garrett continued the briefing. Extraction routes, contingency plans, radio protocols, communication signals, the details that separate successful operations from disasters, the kind of planning that happens in briefing rooms but falls apart the moment you hit the ground and reality punches you in the face. But Kira absorbed every word, memorized every detail. This was what Brennan had trained her for. This was what her father had died teaching her. Mission planning, preparation, the unglamorous work that happens before the trigger gets pulled. After the briefing, the team dispersed, heading to their bunks, checking gear, doing whatever pre-mission ritual helped them sleep. Kira started to leave, but Garrett called her back. Blackwood, hold up. She turned. The room was empty now. Just the two of them and the glow of the projector still showing that mountain compound. Brennan called me 3 weeks ago, told me about you, told me your father saved my life in Mogadishu. Sir, you don't owe me anything because of that. No, but I owe Wade Brennan everything, and he asked me for one thing, give his student a chance. Garrett stepped closer, his voice dropped lower. These men are the best in the world at what they do. They've operated together for 2 years. They trust each other with their lives. You're walking into that dynamic as an outsider. Young, female, unproven in combat. The odds are stacked against you. I understand that, sir. Do you? Because I don't think you understand how hard they're going to make this for you. How much you're going to have to prove. Rodriguez lost a sister in the Pentagon on 9/11. Chen watched his best friend die in Fallujah. Every man on this team has earned his place through blood and sacrifice. They're not going to accept you just because Brennan vouched for you. Then I'll earn it the same way they did, through blood and sacrifice. Garrett studied her face, looking for something, weakness maybe, fear. Whatever he was looking for, he didn't seem to find it. Your father was one of the bravest men I ever served with. Mogadishu was chaos, complete disaster. But Marcus Blackwood stayed calm, stayed professional, kept shooting even when he knew he was going to die. He saved my life and 10 others that day. He paused. Don't get yourself killed trying to live up to that. Your father was special, but he was also human. He made the choice to stay on that rooftop knowing it would cost him everything. I respected that choice. But I also think about his daughter growing up without a father, about what that cost, about whether the trade was worth it. Kira felt something tighten in her chest. Anger, grief, pride, all mixed together into something that didn't have a name. You're asking if I think my father made the right choice. I'm saying be careful, you don't make the same one for the wrong reasons. With respect, sir, if I save those 3 contractors and die doing it, that's not the wrong reason. That's the only reason. Garrett nodded slowly. Yeah, you're Marcus Blackwood's daughter, all right. He turned to leave, then stopped at the door. We roll in 36 hours. Get some sleep. And Blackwood, don't make me regret giving Brennan his favor. Sir, I won't. But she was alone in the room now. Just her and the projector still glowing, showing those mountains, that compound, that impossible distance she'd have to shoot across in the worst conditions imaginable. She pulled out her father's mirror, looked at her reflection in the scratched glass, saw her father's eyes looking back, or maybe that was just wishful thinking. Maybe it was just her own eyes, scared and determined and trying to be brave enough for both of them. 1,200 meters, -30 wind chill, 20-mile-per-hour winds. She'd made harder shots on the range, but the range didn't shoot back. The range didn't have 3 American lives depending on perfection. The range didn't have 7 SEALs trusting her to watch their backs while they walked into hell. Kira closed the mirror, put it back in her pocket, felt it press against her heart. Tomorrow she'd meet the team. Tomorrow she'd prepare her gear. Tomorrow she'd do all the things that needed doing before a mission. But tonight, alone in that briefing room, she let herself feel the fear. Let herself acknowledge that she might not come back, that this mountain might be her Mogadishu, that her father's legacy might end with her failure. Then she pushed it down, locked it away, became the thing Brennan had trained her to be. A weapon cold, precise, ready. Christmas Eve was coming, and with it the hardest test of her life. December 24th, 2004, 0:30. The Black Hawk cut through the night sky, flying nap of the earth, low enough that Kira could see individual rocks on the mountainside rushing past in the darkness. The pilots were pushing it, flying on night vision, threading between peaks, the kind of flying that required absolute concentration and a willingness to die if you made even a small mistake. Inside the helicopter, the SEAL team sat in silence. 7 men, each lost in his own pre-mission ritual. Rodriguez had his eyes closed, lips moving in silent prayer. Chen was checking his rifle for the 3rd time. Garrett sat perfectly still, face unreadable, the way commanders look when they're carrying the weight of every decision they've made. Kira sat at the back, her M4A3 between her knees, scope covered, magazine seated but no round chambered. Not yet. She'd learned long ago not to chamber a round until boots were on the ground. Too many things could go wrong in a helicopter. Too many ways to accidentally put a bullet where it didn't belong. The crew chief held up 5 fingers, 5 minutes to insertion. Garrett keyed his radio, final radio check, sound off. One by one, the team responded, each man confirming his radio worked, each voice calm, professional, the kind of calm that comes from doing this so many times that fear becomes just another variable to manage. 7, Kira said when her turn came, her call sign for this mission. 7. Because she was the 7th member of a 6-man team, because she was the outsider, because they wanted her to know it. Good copy, Garrett said. We go in clean, we get the packages, we get out. No heroes, no improvisation. We stick to the plan. The plan, Kira had memorized every detail. The team would infill on the southern approach, hit the compound at 0200. She'd be inserted on the northern ridge, 1,200 meters away. High ground, perfect sniping position. Her job was simple: provide overwatch, eliminate threats, keep the team alive. Simple but not easy. 2 minutes, the crew chief called out. Kira pulled her balaclava down, adjusted her gloves, checked her chest rig one final time. Everything had to be perfect, every piece of equipment exactly where she needed it, because once she was on that ridge, she was alone. No support, no backup, just her and her rifle and 1,200 meters of frozen hell. 1 minute. The helicopter banked hard. Kira's stomach lurched. They were coming in fast, too fast. But that was the point. Get in, get out. Don't give anyone time to line up a shot. 30 seconds. Garrett looked at each team member, making eye contact. That final moment of connection before everything goes sideways. When he got to Kira, he held her gaze for a heartbeat longer than the others. "Don't miss," he said. "I won't, sir." Then the helicopter was flaring, nose up, tail down. The crew chief threw the door open and Arctic air blasted through the cabin. The cold hit like a hammer, 30 below wind chill, the kind of cold that makes your lungs ache. That freezes your eyeballs if you're not careful. That kills you if you stay exposed too long. Go, go, go. The team poured out, one after another, practiced, efficient. Kira was last. She jumped the 6 feet to the ground, rolled, came up in a crouch. The helicopter was already pulling away, rotors screaming, disappearing into the night. The sound fading until there was nothing but wind and darkness and the mountain pressing down from above. 7, you copy, Garrett's voice in her ear. Copy, moving to position. She started climbing. The ridge was 400 meters up, 45-degree slope, loose rock, ice, snow. She moved carefully, one handhold at a time, one footfall at a time. A fall here would mean a broken ankle, a broken mission. 7 dead SEALs and 3 dead contractors because she couldn't keep her footing. The wind screamed around her, 25 miles per hour, gusting higher, snow stinging her face like thrown sand. She couldn't see more than 20 feet, just the rock in front of her, the next handhold, the next step, the mountain reducing her world to inches. Her father had done this. Mogadishu, climbing a building under fire, finding a rooftop, setting up his rifle while bullets chipped concrete around him. He'd been terrified, she knew that now. Brennan had told her. Marcus was scared out of his mind on that rooftop, but he set up anyway. He shot anyway. He saved those Rangers anyway. Fear means you're human. Courage means you act anyway. 20 minutes of climbing, her lungs burned. Her fingers ached inside her gloves, but she kept moving. Because 7 SEALs were counting on her. Because 3 contractors were counting on her. Because this was what she'd trained for. This was her test. Finally, the ridge, flat, wind-blasted, a cluster of rocks providing cover and concealment. Perfect. 7 in position, she reported. Good copy, Garrett replied. Stand by for our approach. Kira set up her rifle, bipod legs deployed, rifle settled, scope uncovered. She got behind the gun, adjusted her position, found her natural point of aim. Then she looked through the scope and saw the compound for the first time. 1,200 meters away, lit by generator-powered lights, a cluster of buildings, walls, guards visible on the perimeter, moving, talking, smoking cigarettes, acting like they were safe, like they weren't about to have 7 of the deadliest men on the planet walk through their front door. Kira counted targets, memorized positions, calculated ranges and wind drift. The snow made everything harder, reduced visibility, made judging distance more difficult, but she trained for this. Brennan had made her shoot in every condition imaginable. Rain, snow, fog, heat shimmer. He taught her to trust her fundamentals, to know that good technique works regardless of conditions. 7, Garrett called. We're at phase line Alpha. Report compound status. She scanned systematically, left to right, top to bottom, looking for anything out of place, anything that would compromise the mission. 8 guards visible, 4 on the perimeter, 2 at the main building, 2 mobile, no defensive positions prepared, no heavy weapons observed. Copy, any sign of the packages? Negative, main building has lights on 2nd floor. Best guess that's where they're being held. Acknowledged, we're moving to phase line Bravo. Kira settled in, slowed her breathing, let her body relax into the cold. This was the hardest part, the waiting, watching the enemy move around, knowing that in 15 minutes some of them would be dead, knowing that she might be the one to kill them. Her father's voice came back to her. Every shot matters because every life has value. The best shot is the one you don't have to take. Your skill isn't a gift, it's a responsibility. She understood now, understood what he'd meant. Killing wasn't glorious, wasn't heroic, it was just necessary, a tool used to save lives. Her bullets would take lives so that 3 contractors could go home, so that 7 SEALs could complete their mission. The math was simple, cold, but clear. Movement on the compound perimeter. A guard lighting a cigarette, the flame bright in the darkness. He was young, maybe 20. Younger than she was, someone's son, someone's brother. In another life they might have passed each other on the street, might have smiled, nodded, been strangers with no reason to harm each other. But this wasn't another life. This was this life. And in this life he'd chosen to hold Americans hostage, had chosen to point a rifle at innocent people, had chosen to be the enemy. 7. Garrett's voice. We're phase line Charlie, 2 minutes to breach. Copy standing by. Her heart rate slowed, dropped into that zone where everything becomes clear, where the world narrows to the scope picture and the feel of the trigger under her finger and the wind on her face, where doubt and fear and everything human gets pushed aside and all that's left is the shot. This was what Brennan had built her for, this moment, this test, everything she'd learned, everything she'd practiced, everything she'd sacrificed, all of it came down to the next 60 seconds. 1 minute, Garrett said. Kiera's crosshairs settled on the guard nearest the main building. Range 1,215 meters, wind right to left, 5 miles per hour, temperature -8, altitude correction for thin air, bullet drop 41 inches. She adjusted her elevation, adjusted her windage, double-checked her parallax. Her finger rested on the trigger, not pulling, not yet, just resting. Ready. 30 seconds. The guard moved, turned his back, facing away from the compound, looking out into the darkness, probably bored, probably thinking about being warm, probably wishing he was anywhere but here. Kiera's crosshairs tracked him, center mass, stable, her breathing shallow, her heart rate 45 beats per minute, shooter's trance, the place where you're not thinking anymore, just being, just doing what you were built to do. Breach, breach, breach. The explosion lit up the compound, the breaching charge blowing the main door off its hinges. Chaos erupted, guards running, shouting, trying to figure out what was happening. The guard in Kiera's scope turned toward the noise, his rifle coming up, pointing at where the SEALs would be entering. Time slowed, the wind died, everything became simple. Kiera exhaled halfway, held it squeezed. The rifle bucked against her shoulder. The suppressor muted the sound to a quiet cough. Through the scope she watched the bullet's flight, 3 seconds across impossible distance. Watched the guard take one more step, watched the bullet arrive, watched him fall. Target down. Another guard appeared, running toward the breach point, rifle up, firing. Kiera cycled the bolt, loaded, aimed, fired. Target down. A third guard, this one smart enough to take cover, hiding behind a wall, but Kiera had the high ground, had the angle, could see around his cover, could see him thinking he was safe. Cycled, loaded, aimed, fired. Target down. 7. Garrett's voice tight with adrenaline. Good shooting, keep it up. She didn't respond, didn't have time, more targets, more threats. The compound was awake now, guards pouring out of buildings, some running toward the breach, some running away, some just standing there confused, trying to understand what was happening. Kiera became a machine. Cycle, load, aim, fire, target down, cycle, load, aim, fire, target down, each shot perfect, each bullet finding its mark. 1,200 meters might as well have been 12 feet. The scope made it intimate, made her see their faces, made her watch them die. This was what her father had felt. This was the burden he'd carried. This was why he'd come home from deployments quieter, more distant, haunted by the faces of men he'd killed even though killing them had been right, even though every bullet had saved lives. Contact right, Rodriguez's voice. We're taking fire from the secondary building. Kira shifted her aim, found the building, found the muzzle flashes, found the shooter, a man on a second-floor window, AK-47 spitting fire at the SEALs below. Range 1,230 meters, shooting upward now, gravity working against the bullet, wind gusting. She adjusted, breath fired. The man in the window jerked backward, disappeared. Threat eliminated, she reported. 7 Garrett, we have the packages, heading to extract Point Bravo, cover our movement. Copy. The team appeared at the compound entrance, moving fast, 2 SEALs carrying a civilian between them. The contractors, alive, mission successful, now they just had to get out. More guards appeared, these ones smarter, using cover, moving tactically. Someone had training, someone knew what they were doing. Kira tracked them, fired, missed. The wind had shifted, she adjusted, fired again, target down. 7 RPG. She saw it, a man with a rocket launcher, kneeling, shouldering the weapon, aiming at the extract point where the SEALs were running. Range 1,250 meters, moving target, wind gusting. If she missed, 7 SEALs died. If she missed, 3 contractors died. If she missed, everything her father had built, everything Brennan had taught her, all of it meant nothing. Her crosshairs settled on the man's chest. Not center mass, too much equipment, too much protection. Higher, the throat, the only exposed area. The wind died, just for a second, just long enough. She fired. Through the scope she watched the bullet arrive, watched the man fall backward, watched the RPG clatter to the ground unfired, watched 7 SEALs and 3 contractors keep running toward safety. The extraction helicopter was inbound, 30 seconds out. The team was almost there, almost safe. But a dozen guards were still alive, still fighting, still trying to stop them. Kira fired until her magazine was empty. 10 rounds, 10 targets, 9 fell, 1 made it to cover. She reloaded fast, practiced. 5 seconds, back behind the gun, finding targets, firing. The helicopter touched down. The team piled in, civilians first, then Rodriguez, Chen, the others. Garrett was last. He turned toward the ridge, toward where Kira was. He couldn't see her, 1,200 meters away in the darkness. But he knew she was there, knew she was watching. He raised his fist, thumped it against his chest once. Thanks, respect, acknowledgement. Then he was in the helicopter. The bird was lifting off, pulling away, disappearing into the snow and darkness. 7 Garrett's voice, time to go, your ride's inbound. Kira broke down her rifle, fast but careful, every movement practiced. She'd done this 1,000 times, in sunlight, in darkness, in rain and snow and mud. Her hands knew the movements without thinking. The second helicopter appeared, dropping through the storm, landing on the ridge, the crew chief waving her in. She ran, jumped, landed inside. The helicopter pulled away, the mountain falling away below, the compound getting smaller, becoming just lights in the darkness. Then not even that, just snow and wind and the night. Kira sat back, let out a breath she felt like she'd been holding for an hour. Her hands were shaking, not from fear, from adrenaline, from the come-down after the fight. She looked at her gloves. They were wet, melted snow or maybe sweat, hard to tell. The crew chief gave her a thumbs up, smiled, shouted over the rotor noise, hell of a shooting. She nodded, couldn't speak yet, didn't trust her voice. Everything was hitting her now, everything she'd done, every target she'd dropped, every life she'd taken. 18 men. She'd killed 18 men tonight. 18 fathers, brothers, sons. 18 people who'd woken up this morning not knowing it was their last day. 18 families who'd be getting news they'd never wanted to hear. But 3 Americans were alive. 3 families would get their loved ones back. 7 SEALs had completed their mission. 7 operators would go home to their families. The math worked. It had to work. Because if it didn't, then everything she'd just done was meaningless. Then she was just a killer, not a protector, not a warrior, just someone who'd ended lives and called it service. Her father's mirror pressed against her chest. She pulled it out, looked at her reflection in the scratched glass, saw a stranger looking back, someone older, someone who'd crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed, someone who'd learned that saving lives sometimes meant taking them. She closed the mirror, put it away, leaned her head back against the helicopter's cold metal wall and closed her eyes. 18 targets down, 3 civilians rescued, 7 SEALs safe. Mission complete. But something had changed, something inside her that she couldn't name yet, couldn't understand yet, something that would take years to process, years to accept, years to forgive herself for. The helicopter flew on through the Christmas Eve storm, carrying her away from the mountain, away from the compound, away from the 18 men who'd never see another sunrise. But she knew she'd carry them with her. Every face she'd seen through that scope, every life she'd taken, they'd become part of her now, part of the price she'd paid to be her father's daughter. And the night was far from over. The Black Hawk landed at Bagram 40 minutes later. The storm had gotten worse. Snow falling so thick you couldn't see 20 feet. The kind of weather that grounded aircraft and kept smart people indoors. But nobody ever accused special operations of being smart, just effective. Kira stepped onto the tarmac. Her legs felt like rubber, adrenaline crash hitting hard now. She'd been running on pure will for the last 2 hours. Now the bill was coming due. She wanted to sleep, wanted to eat, wanted to be anywhere but here. But Garrett was waiting. The whole team was waiting, standing in a loose circle beside their helicopter, snow covering their shoulders, faces still painted, eyes still hard from the mission. They watched her approach, silent, evaluating, making their final judgment. Rodriguez stepped forward first, held out his hand. 18 targets, no misses in that weather, at that range. He shook his head slowly, like he couldn't quite believe it. That's the best shooting I've ever seen. Kira took his hand. His grip was firm, honest, the handshake of someone who respected you, who saw you as an equal. Thank you. One by one the others came forward. Chen, the others whose names she'd barely learned, each man shaking her hand, each man acknowledging what she'd done, what she'd proven. Finally Garrett, he stepped forward, pulled something from his pocket, a patch, SEAL Team 7, black and gold, the kind of thing you didn't get unless you'd earned it, unless you'd bled with the team, unless they'd decided you were one of them. He held it out. We don't usually do this. We don't let outsiders in, but you're not an outsider anymore. You saved our lives tonight. You earned this. Kira took the patch, felt the weight of it, felt what it represented, acceptance, belonging, proof that she'd done what her father had done, that she'd saved lives, that she'd carried his legacy forward. Sir, I don't know what to say. Don't say anything. Just don't miss if we ever work together again. He smiled, tired, genuine, the smile of a man who just survived another mission, who'd brought his team home alive, who'd completed his objective. Your father would be proud. Brennan's going to be over the moon when I call him. You did exactly what he said you'd do. You proved everyone wrong without saying a word. You let your shooting do the talking. Kira felt something crack inside her, the armor she'd been wearing, the toughness she'd wrapped around herself. It cracked and something warm leaked through. Pride, relief, grief, joy, all mixed together into something that made her eyes burn. Thank you, sir, for giving me the chance. Thank you for not making me regret it. Garrett turned to his team. All right, let's get debriefed and get some sleep. We fly home tomorrow. Christmas dinner back in North Carolina. The team dispersed, walking toward the compound, leaving Kira standing alone on the tarmac, snow falling, wind screaming, the cold pressing in from all sides. She looked at the patch in her hands, turned it over, saw something written on the back in permanent marker. Names, signatures, all 7 team members, Rodriguez, Chen, Garrett, the others. They'd all signed it, made it official, made it real. She pressed the patch against her chest, felt it where her father's mirror rested. Two pieces of metal, two symbols of everything she'd become, everything she'd sacrificed to get here. Her phone buzzed, text message from Brennan. How did it go? She smiled despite the exhaustion, despite the weight, despite everything. Mission complete. 3 rescued, 7 safe, 18 targets, no misses. The reply came instantly. I knew you'd do it. Your father knew too. He's proud. I'm proud. Now get some sleep. You've earned it. She typed back. Thank you, Colonel, for everything, for believing in me, for training me, for giving me this chance. His response made her throat tighten. You don't thank family, you just keep making them proud. Semper Fi, Kira, Semper Fi. Kira walked toward the compound, each step heavier than the last. The adrenaline was completely gone now, just exhaustion left. The bone-deep kind that comes after you've pushed yourself past every limit, past every breaking point, past everything you thought you could handle. But she'd done it. She'd proven herself. She'd saved lives. She'd carried her father's legacy forward. She'd become what Brennan had built her to be. A weapon, a protector, a Marine. She made it to her bunk, collapsed on the thin mattress, still wearing her gear, too tired to undress, too tired to clean her rifle, too tired to do anything except close her eyes and let the darkness take her. But sleep didn't come easy. It never does after your first kills, after you cross that line, after you take lives and call it service. Instead, she lay there thinking about the 18 men, wondering about their families, their children, their hopes and dreams that would never come true because she'd put bullets in them. The math worked, she knew that. 3 rescued, 7 saved, the good outweighed the bad, the mission was successful. But that didn't make it easier, didn't make the weight lighter, didn't make the faces go away. Her father had carried this weight for years, had lived with the faces, had tried to be a good father and a good husband while carrying the burden of lives taken. How had he done it? How had he smiled at her across the breakfast table? How had he played catch in the backyard? How had he lived a normal life while carrying the weight of the dead? She understood now. The distance in his eyes sometimes, the faraway look when he thought no one was watching, the nightmares he never talked about, the drinking he thought was secret. He'd been trying to carry the weight alone, trying to protect his family from the darkness he'd seen, trying to be 2 people at once, the warrior, the father, never quite succeeding at either. Kira pulled out the mirror, looked at her reflection in the dim light. Her father looked back, or maybe it was just her seeing what she wanted to see, seeing the connection, the legacy, the burden they both carried. I understand now, Dad. I understand why you were the way you were, why you couldn't always be present, why part of you was always somewhere else, on that rooftop, with those faces, carrying the weight. I'm carrying it now too, and I'll carry it for the rest of my life, just like you did. But I'll try to do better. I'll try to not let it destroy me. I'll try to honor what you taught me, that the burden is real but the mission matters, that the weight is heavy but the lives saved make it worthwhile. She closed the mirror, put it away, finally let sleep take her. And in her dreams she was on that mountain again, behind the scope, watching the targets fall, counting the lives, doing the math, over and over, until it almost made sense. The weeks after the mission blurred together. Debriefings, paperwork, medical checks, the bureaucratic aftermath of a successful operation, the part they don't show in movies, the part that's somehow more exhausting than the mission itself. Kira flew back to Fort Bragg on December 27th. The C-17 was packed with Marines heading home, men and women who'd spent Christmas in a war zone, who'd missed family dinners and presents and all the normal things that make the holiday special. They slept or played cards or stared at nothing, each person processing their deployment in their own way. She sat alone at the back, the SEAL Team's 7 patch in her pocket, her father's mirror in the other pocket, the weight of 18 kills sitting on her shoulders like a physical thing. The flight attendant, an Air Force sergeant, stopped beside her. "Ma'am, you okay? You need anything?" "I'm fine, thank you." The sergeant nodded but didn't move, just stood there looking at her with eyes that had seen this before, seen young soldiers coming back from their first real combat, seen the way it changed them, aged them, made them into something different than what they'd been before. First deployment. Yes. Gets easier, not easy, but easier. The sergeant moved on, left Kira alone with her thoughts, with the memories that were already starting to calcify, starting to become part of her permanent landscape. Faces she'd see every time she closed her eyes, numbers she'd count every time she tried to sleep. 18, that was her number now, her burden, her proof that she'd served, that she'd done what needed doing. But it didn't feel like proof. It felt like debt, like she owed those 18 men something, like their deaths had bought her this life and she better make it worth something. Better make their sacrifice mean something more than just another successful mission. The plane touched down at Pope Army Airfield just after midnight. New Year's Eve, 24 hours from a new year, a fresh start. Except there's no such thing as fresh starts when you're carrying the weight. Colonel Brennan was waiting on the tarmac. Kira saw him through the window as the plane taxied in, standing alone, hands clasped behind his back, looking older than he had 2 weeks ago, the cancer eating through him faster than expected. She was the last one off the plane, walked down the ramp into North Carolina cold that felt tropical compared to Afghanistan. Brennan stood there watching her approach, his eyes moving over her, reading her, seeing the changes. She stopped in front of him, came to attention, saluted. "Colonel." He returned the salute. Then, breaking protocol, he stepped forward and pulled her into a hug. The kind of hug a father gives a daughter. The kind that says, "I'm proud and I was worried and thank God you're safe all at once." "Welcome home, Kira." She let herself relax into it, let herself be weak for just a moment. Let the armor crack and the emotion leak through. She didn't cry, couldn't cry, not yet, but she held on to him like he was the only solid thing in a world that had started spinning too fast. He released her, stepped back, looked at her face. "You did it." Garrett called me, told me everything. 18 targets, 0 misses, in the worst conditions imaginable. You saved 3 lives, protected 7 more. You did exactly what your father did. You proved that Marcus Blackwood's legacy lives on. Kira nodded, couldn't speak yet, throat too tight. "Come on, let's get you home, get you some real food, get you some sleep." They walked to his truck, an old Ford, army green, the kind of vehicle that had seen a lot of miles and a lot of wars and kept running anyway. He drove through empty streets, past the base, past the ranges where he'd trained her, past all the familiar places that suddenly felt foreign, like she'd been gone for years instead of weeks. "How are you feeling?" he asked. "Tired." "That's not what I meant." She looked out the window, watched the streetlights slide past, each one illuminating nothing, just darkness and more darkness. "I killed 18 people, Colonel. 18 men who won't go home, won't see their families, won't get another sunrise. And I'm supposed to feel good about that because I saved some lives, because the math works, because mission accomplished." Brennan didn't respond right away, just drove, let the silence settle, let her words hang in the air. Finally he spoke. "Your father struggled with the same thing. Every kill weighed on him. Every face stayed with him. He used to say that the day killing becomes easy is the day you stop being human. The day you stop feeling the weight is the day you become the thing you're fighting against." He glanced at her. "The fact that you're feeling this means you're still human, still moral, still carrying the burden the right way." "But how do I carry it? How do I live with this?" "You do what your father did. You use it as fuel. You let it drive you to save more lives, to train better soldiers, to make sure every bullet you fire from now on matters. You don't forget the 18. You carry them. You honor them by being the best version of yourself, by making their deaths by something meaningful." They pulled up to a small house. Base housing, lights on inside, warm, inviting, everything Afghanistan wasn't. I've got food inside. Chili, cornbread, beer if you want it, or just coffee, whatever you need. Inside, the house smelled like home, like someone's grandmother lived here. Brennan moved around the kitchen with practiced efficiency, filling bowls, cutting bread, moving slower than he used to but still capable, still strong, still fighting the cancer that would win eventually but hadn't won yet. They ate in silence. Kira hadn't realized how hungry she was until the first bite. Then she couldn't stop, bowl after bowl, bread after bread, her body demanding fuel to replace everything she'd burned, everything she'd sacrificed. After dinner, Brennan pulled out a bottle of bourbon, poured 2 glasses, slid one across the table. To Marcus Blackwood, to the 18, to missions accomplished and burdens carried. They drank, the bourbon burned going down, warm, sharp, real. "I'm dying, Kira." Brennan said it matter-of-factly, like he was commenting on the weather. "The doctors give me 6 weeks, maybe 8, I won't see spring." She set her glass down, felt the words land like physical blows. "Colonel, I'm so sorry." "Don't be, I've had a good run, seen things, done things, trained warriors who'll carry on after I'm gone, including you, especially you." He refilled both glasses. "I need to tell you something, something I've never told anyone, about Mogadishu, about your father." She waited, knowing this was important, knowing whatever came next would change things. The mission that day was supposed to be routine. Intel said light resistance, but Intel was wrong. It was an ambush, well planned, well executed. We were pinned down, taking casualties. Your father and I were on a rooftop providing cover fire. He paused, took a drink, the memories playing across his face. We could have pulled back, should have pulled back, but there were Rangers trapped below. 11 men. Good men, if we left they'd die, so we stayed. We kept shooting, kept the enemy's heads down, kept those Rangers alive. But there were too many hostiles, too much firepower. Your father was running low on ammunition. I was hit, shoulder wound, nothing fatal but enough to slow me down. And then your father did something I'll never forget. He met her eyes. He gave me his ammunition, told me to keep shooting, told me to save those Rangers. Then he picked up an AK from a dead Somali, not his rifle, not his weapon, just whatever was available, and he kept fighting." Brennan's voice cracked slightly. "I begged him to pull back, told him we'd done enough, but he wouldn't. He said those Rangers were someone's sons, someone's brothers, someone's fathers, and he wasn't going to let them die because we ran out of bullets. He was shot 3 times, kept fighting. I got him to cover, applied pressure to the wounds, but the bleeding wouldn't stop. The extraction bird was inbound, but we both knew he wouldn't make it. The last thing he said to me was, make sure Kira knows I loved her. Make sure she knows I died so others could live. Make sure she becomes better than I was." Tears streamed down Kira's face now. Silent, unstoppable, all the grief she'd been holding back, all the years of missing him, all the questions that could never be answered. "And then he gave me this." Brennan reached into his pocket, pulled out something familiar. The mirror, her father's mirror, except it wasn't the one she carried. This was different, newer, less scratched. "I lied to you," Brennan said quietly. "This is the mirror your father carried in Mogadishu. The one I gave you was mine. I gave you mine because I wanted you to carry something of me too. Something that said you were my student as much as you were his daughter." He set the mirror on the table, pushed it toward her. "But this one is his, and now I want you to have it. Both mirrors, both legacies, his and mine, because you've earned them, because you've proven you can carry the weight, because I won't be here much longer and I need to know these went to someone worthy." Kira picked up her father's mirror, held it next to hers, 2 identical pieces of metal, 2 symbols of everything she'd inherited, everything she'd become. "Thank you, Colonel, for training me, for believing in me, for lying to me in the kindest way possible." Brennan smiled, tired, genuine, the smile of a man at peace with his choices. "Your father and I made a promise to each other in Mogadishu. If one of us died, the other would look after his family, make sure his legacy continued, make sure his death brought something meaningful. I kept that promise. I trained you. I shaped you. I gave you the skills to save lives. Now I need you to make me a promise. Pass this forward. Train others. Teach them what we taught you. Make sure the legacy doesn't end with you. Make sure there's always someone carrying these mirrors. Someone who understands that the weight is real but the mission matters." "I promise, Colonel, I'll teach, I'll train, I'll pass it forward." "Good, that's all an old warrior can ask for. That his knowledge outlives him. That his lesson saved lives long after he's gone." They sat there drinking bourbon and talking until dawn. Brennan told her stories about her father, about Grenada and Desert Storm and all the operations that don't make the history books, about the men they'd saved and the men they'd lost, about the weight they both carried and how they'd learned to bear it. And Kira listened, absorbed every word, committed every story to memory, because soon these stories would be all that remained. Soon Brennan would be gone and she'd be the keeper of the legacy, the carrier of the weight, the one responsible for passing it forward. As the sun rose over Fort Bragg, Brennan walked her to the door. "One more thing." He pulled an envelope from his pocket. "Don't open this until I'm gone. It's everything I want you to know, everything I couldn't say while I was alive, everything you'll need to hear when the weight gets too heavy." She took the envelope, felt the thickness of it, the weight of words written by a dying man who wanted to make sure his last lesson stuck. "Thank you, Colonel, for everything. Thank you for being worth it, for proving that everything your father and I sacrificed, everything we built, everything we believed in, thank you for proving it all mattered." They hugged one last time. Then Kira walked away into the morning light, carrying 2 mirrors, an envelope, and the weight of 2 legacies that would define the rest of her life. 6 weeks later, Colonel Wade Brennan died in his sleep, peacefully, surrounded by memories of battles fought and warriors trained. Kira was there, held his hand in the final hours, watched the cancer finally win the war it had been fighting since Kuwait. At his funeral, 7 SEALs came: Rodriguez, Chen, Garrett, the others from Christmas Eve. They stood at attention, saluted, acknowledged the man who'd saved their commander's life in Mogadishu, who'd trained the sniper who'd saved theirs in Afghanistan. After the funeral, Kira finally opened the envelope, sat alone in Brennan's empty house, read the letter he'd left behind. "Kira, if you're reading this, I'm gone. Cancer won. But I'm not sad, I'm proud, proud of you, proud of everything you've become, proud that my last contribution to the Corps was you. You asked me once how to carry the weight, how to live with the kills, how to be human while being a weapon. I didn't have a good answer then, but now, at the end, I think I finally understand. You don't carry the weight alone. You share it with your brothers and sisters in arms, with the people you train, with the legacy that came before you and will continue after you're gone. The weight is real, but it's lighter when it's shared. You'll train others, I know you will. You'll pass on everything your father and I taught you, and when you do, you'll be sharing the weight, helping them carry it, making it bearable. The 18 men you killed in Afghanistan are gone. That's real. That's permanent. Nothing changes that, but the 3 you saved are alive. The 7 you protected are alive, and they'll go on to save others, to protect others, to pass the legacy forward. That's the math that matters, not the kills, the lives touched, the ripples spreading outward, the endless chain of warriors protecting each other, saving each other, carrying each other through the darkness. Your father died on a Mogadishu rooftop so 11 Rangers could live. Those Rangers went home, had families, raised children. Those children are having children. Marcus Blackwood's death bought generations of life. That's what matters. That's what makes the burden bearable. The same is true for your 18. Their deaths bought 3 contractors their lives, 7 SEALs their mission, and all the people those 10 will go on to save. The chain continues. The legacy grows. The weight spreads out until it's not one person carrying it anymore. It's thousands, millions, all of us together. Be a teacher, Kira. Train the next generation. Pass on the mirrors. Share the stories. Make sure no one carries this weight alone. And remember, the day you stop feeling the burden is the day you need to stop serving. Stay human. Stay moral. Stay grateful for the lives you've saved and sorrowful for the lives you've taken. That balance is what makes you a warrior instead of a killer. I'm proud of you. Your father is proud of you. We're watching from whatever comes next, and we'll be here when your mission is complete, when you've taught everyone you can teach, when you've passed the legacy as far forward as it can go. Until then, semper fidelis, always faithful. Colonel Wade Brennan. P.S. The house is yours. I left it to you in my will. Use it however you want, but I hope you'll use it to train warriors, to share the knowledge, to keep the legacy alive. Kira read the letter 3 times, each time finding new meaning, new wisdom, new comfort. Then she folded it carefully, put it in the same drawer where Brennan had kept his medals and commendations and all the official recognition that meant less than the lives he'd saved. She looked around the empty house, saw possibility, saw purpose, saw the future. This would be her classroom, her training ground, her place to pass the legacy forward, just as Brennan had wanted, just as her father would have wanted. The weight was still there, would always be there. 18 faces, 2 mentors gone, a burden that wouldn't lift. But it felt lighter now, shared, spread across time and space and all the warriors who'd carry it together. She pulled out both mirrors, placed them side by side on the desk. Her father's, Brennan's, 2 pieces of metal that had seen war and death and sacrifice, 2 symbols of everything she'd inherited. And then she began to plan, who to train, what to teach, how to pass it all forward so that when she was gone, the legacy would continue, the chain unbroken, the weight shared among all who'd chosen to serve. The years passed in a blur of purpose and pain. Kira threw herself into training, into teaching, into building the next generation of Marine snipers who would carry the legacy forward. She stayed at Fort Bragg, used Brennan's house as her base. During official duty hours, she taught at Scout Sniper School, standard curriculum, official doctrine, everything by the book. But in the evenings, in the weekends, in the early mornings before reveille, she taught her own curriculum. The lessons Brennan had taught her, the wisdom her father had passed down, the hard-won knowledge that only comes from carrying the weight. Young Marines came to her, some officially assigned, others who'd heard the stories, who'd heard about the Christmas ghost, who wanted to learn from the woman who'd made 18 perfect shots in impossible conditions, who'd saved 3 contractors and 7 SEALs, who'd earned a SEAL team patch without being a SEAL. She taught them all, patiently, thoroughly, passing on every lesson, every trick, every hard truth about what it means to be a sniper, what it costs, what it demands. Some washed out, couldn't handle the mental burden, couldn't reconcile being human with being a weapon. She let them go without judgment. Better to know before the first real shot than after. But others thrived, absorbed the lessons, grew into warriors who understood that killing was sometimes necessary but never glorious, that saving lives was the goal even when taking lives was the method, that the weight was real but bearable if you shared it. 3 years after Afghanistan, Kira made Staff Sergeant, youngest female Marine to ever hold the rank. They offered her deployment orders: Iraq, Syria, Somalia, anywhere she wanted to go, anywhere they needed someone with her skills. She turned them all down. "My place is here," she told the major who couldn't understand why she'd refused the chance to serve in combat again. Training the next generation, teaching them not just how to shoot but why it matters, passing the legacy forward. But you're wasting your talent, the major said. You're one of the best snipers we have. You should be in the field. With respect, sir, I did my time in the field. I made my 18 kills. I carried my weight. Now I need to make sure those 18 bought more than just one mission. I need to make sure they bought generations of better trained warriors. That's how I honor the dead. That's how I make the math work. The major didn't understand, but he approved the assignment. Let her stay. Let her teach. Let her build something that would outlast her own service. By 2010, Kira had trained 73 Marines. 14 were deployed. 9 had combat kills. All had come back alive. That was the statistic that mattered, not the kills, the survival rate. The fact that her students were good enough to do their jobs and smart enough to stay alive while doing them. She kept track of them all, sent emails, made phone calls, checked in, made sure they were handling the weight, made sure they weren't carrying it alone, made sure the legacy was spreading the way it should. And slowly, gradually, the weight on her own shoulders lightened, not because the 18 were forgotten, but because their deaths were buying more than she'd ever imagined. Every student she trained was a life saved. Every mission her students completed successfully was proof that the 18 had mattered, that their deaths had bought something real, something lasting. Christmas Eve 2010, 6 years after Afghanistan, Kira sat in her classroom at Fort Bragg, empty desks, silent. The winter sun setting beyond the windows. She was 31 now, older, wiser, carrying scars that didn't show but were there nonetheless. Her phone rang, unknown number. This is Staff Sergeant Blackwood. Staff Sergeant, this is Commander Garrett, promoted now. Captain, running SEAL training programs, just wanted to call, tell you I'm at Arlington, visiting your father and Brennan, wanted them to know about you, about the 73 Marines you've trained, about the lives they're saving, about how their legacy continues. Thank you, sir, that means more than you know. You should come, it's Christmas Eve, the anniversary, you should be here. She checked the time, 1700. She could make Arlington by 1830 if she left now. I'm on my way. An hour later, Kira Blackwood stood in Arlington National Cemetery, snow falling soft and clean, the headstones white against the gathering darkness, Christmas lights visible in distant houses, the world at peace while warriors slept beneath the frozen ground. Wade Brennan, Marcus Blackwood, side by side, just as they'd been buried 6 years ago. She knelt, placed a wreath at each grave, touched the cold marble, felt the weight of everything they'd given her, everything they'd sacrificed so she could stand here, so she could teach, so she could pass their legacy forward. Dad, Colonel, I kept my promises, I taught them well, I told them about you, I made every shot count. The snow fell, silent, beautiful, the kind of snow that covered battlefields and made them peaceful again. I trained 73 Marines. 5 of them are women, they're out there now. Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, saving lives, making impossible shots, honoring you, honoring everything you taught me. She pulled out the mirror, the original father's mirror, Brennan's mirror, her mirror. The glass was scratched, the frame bent, but it had survived, had saved her life, had become a symbol of everything she'd learned, everything she'd become. I'm going to give this to Corporal Cross. She's the niece of one of the 11 you saved, Dad, David Cross. She's training to be a sniper because of you, because you gave her uncle the chance to live, to watch her grow up, to see her join the Corps. The wind picked up, carried snow across the graves, carried memories across decades. That's legacy, isn't it? Not just the lives you saved directly, but all the lives touched by those lives. 11 men in Mogadishu, their children, their grandchildren, all alive because you stayed on that rooftop, all building futures because you made the hard choice. She stood, saluted, held it for a full minute, then whispered the final words. Semper Fidelis, always faithful, I'll see you on the other side, when my mission is complete, when I've taught everyone I can teach, When I've passed the knowledge as far forward as it can go, then I'll come home and you can tell me if I did it right, if I honored you the way you deserved." She turned to leave but stopped. One more thing. She reached into her pocket, pulled out the seal patch, 12 signatures, 12 warriors who'd accepted her, who'd made her one of them. She placed it between the graves, let it rest on the snow. "They called me Ghost, the Christmas Ghost, because I saved 12 on Christmas Eve. One more than you, Dad, but I only succeeded because of what you taught me. What Brennan taught me. What both of you sacrificed to give me." The snow covered the patch slowly. White on black, peace on war, beauty on violence. "I'm not living in your shadow anymore. I'm casting my own light. But that light only exists because you lit it first. Thank you for everything, for the training, for the love, for showing me what courage really means." She walked away through the snow, through the gathering darkness, past thousands of graves, thousands of warriors who'd given everything so others could live free. At the cemetery gates, she turned back one last time. The graves were barely visible now, just white shapes in the snow, but she knew where they were, would always know, would carry them with her until her own mission ended. Her phone buzzed, text message from Cross. "Staff Sergeant, I just got word, deployment orders. Afghanistan, spring 2011. I'm scared but ready. Thank you for everything you've taught me." Kira smiled, typed a response. "You're ready, trust your training, make every shot count. And remember, you're not just carrying a rifle, you're carrying a legacy. Your uncle's legacy, my father's legacy, Brennan's legacy. Don't let fear stop you from being great. Semper Fi." She sent it, then looked up at the snow falling from the dark sky. Christmas Eve, the anniversary, the day her father had died, the day she'd been reborn as something more than Marcus Blackwood's daughter, the Christmas ghost. But ghosts didn't haunt. They watched over, they protected. They passed on wisdom so other warriors could survive, could thrive, could save lives and build legacies of their own. That was the real gift, not the 18 kills, not the 3 records, not the medals or the reputation or the name that would be spoken in sniper schools for generations. The real gift was teaching, passing knowledge forward, lighting candles in the darkness so others could find their way. Her father had lit the first candle. Brennan had kept it burning. Now she carried it forward, and Corporal Cross would carry it after her, and someone else after Cross. The light passing from hand to hand, from generation to generation, from warrior to warrior, forever. That was legacy. That was immortality. That was what it meant to be a Marine. Semper Fidelis, always faithful to the end. Kira Blackwood walked into the snowy night, past the graves of heroes, past the monuments to sacrifice, past the eternal flame that burned for those who'd given everything. She had students to train, knowledge to pass on, a legacy to honor. The weight was still there, would always be there. 18 faces, 2 mentors gone, a burden that wouldn't lift. But she wasn't carrying it alone anymore. 73 Marines shared it with her. Thousands more would share it in the years to come, the weight spreading out, lighter, bearable, transformed from crushing burden into noble purpose. She thought about the email she'd received last week, from a girl named Zana, 9 years old in Afghanistan, 15 now, living in Minnesota with a foster family, starting high school, wanting to study medicine, wanting to save lives. The girl Kira had saved. The girl whose future had been bought with 18 deaths. That was the math that mattered, not the kills, the futures, the lives touched, the ripples spreading outward forever. And somewhere in those ripples, in those endless consequences of choices made on a frozen mountain on Christmas Eve, there was redemption, there was meaning, there was proof that the burden was worth carrying, that the weight could be transformed into light, that death could buy life if you paid the price willingly, honorably, with full knowledge of what it cost. Kira Blackwood had paid that price, and she would spend the rest of her life making sure it bought something worthy, something lasting, something her father and Brennan would be proud of. The snow fell, the night deepened, the world turned, and somewhere in the darkness, warriors prepared for missions that would demand everything. Warriors she'd trained, warriors who carried her legacy, warriors who would pass it forward to others until the chain stretched into infinity. That was enough, that was everything, that was what it meant to serve. Semper Fidelis, always faithful.